Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having on Fresh 92.7.
Welcome to Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. We're your hosts Alex and Cass, and we're here to take you through until 7 p.m. tonight with some super interesting stories.
It's been a big week of news, so strap yourself in. Up first, Ben talks with Professor Jill Slay about privacy and cybersecurity.
Later on, I speak with Emma Money, the Australian of the Year SA local hero, about cystic fibrosis, and Grace speaks with Po Ling Yao about the Adelaide Showgrounds.
But that isn't all. We have Kieran talking you through robot spiders on Wavelength Explains, and Kate talks you through yoga in Heaps Good News. Let's get into it, shall we?
Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Your research and background is in satellite cyber security and cyber intrusions. And people that may be unaware, can you explain what a cyber intrusion is?
Well, really what we're talking about at the basic level is that you are the owner of a device or a computer at the personal level, and somebody else breaks into your system and they're going to either steal your private data, they're going to take away control from you of your machine or device, or they're going to change the data, the files that you have on your device or your machine.
I'm really interested to know how we can protect ourselves. Is it a matter of using ad blockers on our phones or other protective softwares on our computers, or do you think we need more?
Well, I think if I was to look at what I use myself, I think the most important thing for people to be using is something to protect their password, because one of the major ways that the criminal is going to attack your machine or get into your own machine or your own device is to either break the password by running software, which helps them to find your password by testing out many, many words, or else they're going to find some social means to get your password. And many people use the same password on every website. So if I'm the bad guy and I get your password, I'm just going to test that out on every other say, social media or website in your bank. The other things that I have are anti-malware, which is I use something called Malwarebytes, which also can be free, and that protects you. You can run that on top of any other kind of security mechanism that you might have. So I'm sort of triple protecting myself, really.
That certainly seems to be the way forward. What's one of the easiest ways, do you think, for hackers to get hold of the information? Would it be from your location and passwords, or do you think it'd be through the hotspot?
Through a hotspot. They're very insecure. So it's almost trying to spy you on the same network as them. But there's lots of different mechanisms that hackers use. It really depends on who you are. So if you're, say, a senior member of a company, they will watch you. They'll watch you on social media to find out what you do. They'll write targeted emails to you with a piece of malware in them. So for me as a professor, the most targeting email is inviting me to another country. Click on this link. Come and give us a talk. I have trained myself never to click on a link if I don't know who sent it. The fake eBay, the fake FedEx messages that you were never expecting, companies who you don't work with. All they want you to do is click on the link so that they can put a piece of malware on your phone or on your computer.
And do we know how they get our personal information, like a mobile, or whether they're emailing us? Do we know how that is?
Well, some of it, which is more targeted, where it looks like, for me, like I'm a professor, so it looks like they know I'm a professor. Some of it they might have guessed, but basically you can buy software, you can buy systems which will just randomly generate phone numbers in Australia with the right number of characters, or randomly write to Gmail, because so many people have got Gmail. So this is very organised crime.
Of course. Are there any ways that we can stay one step ahead of hackers so that we can ensure that our personal data is not readily accessible?
I think the answer is protect your devices with password vault, anti-malware on top of the security mechanisms. Consider VPNs, virtual private networks, where you can have a special, more secure contact through the network.
Whether it be in the telecommunications sector or not, can our listeners be reassured that improvements are being made within the cybersecurity industry to protect that data? Or?
I think that Australia, generally speaking, has been slower than other countries. So the British have put in many more measures at a national level than we have in terms of protection. We do have, I think we do have lots of resources out there in Australia to, what I believe is happening with the Albanese government and with Claire O'Neill, the new minister, is basically communicating better. And I'm assured that there's going to be new regulations, because the fines that we have for companies like like in the Optus case, if it's proved there was any kind of negligence, fines are quite low for the nature of the company. So I can imagine could be more legislation, regulation to put more penalties on the companies. And I expect that we will see more of a demand for training for the directors of the companies, who the boards who govern the companies, because even though there's been an increase in that kind of stuff, we haven't been as rigorous as other countries have been.
Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having on Fresh 92.7.
Amazing. Thank you for that, Ben and Professor Jill Slade. You're listening to Wavelength on Fresh.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having. You may have heard of cystic fibrosis, but may be confused about what it is and how it affects people.
That's right. I spoke with Emma Money to hear her story.
Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Cystic fibrosis, it's a life-threatening disorder. Not a lot of people know enough about it, or if anything about it. Would you like to explain what CF is?
Absolutely. It's funny, I think a lot of people could probably relate to it to a degree. If anyone's had COVID, I feel like COVID has put a accidental awareness on cystic fibrosis, because CF, just to give you the background on CF, it affects primarily the lungs and the digestive system. So people with CF have a chronic cough, and I know I've had COVID myself, so I can use it as an example. You end up with that croaky cough that just doesn't go away. You hold your breath trying not to cough when you're in public. But for people with cystic fibrosis, the mucus buildup in the lungs is a lot thicker and stickier. So it makes it harder to breathe, causes that chronic cough ongoing. So if you imagine putting your fingers over your nose, block your nose for 30 seconds, if you were to breathe through your mouth that way, gives you a bit of an idea with how it feels for somebody with CF to breathe. Now, the digestive system breakdown is that the body doesn't produce enough pancreas to digest food. So for me, back in the day, because of medical advancement today, it's a little bit less. But back in the day, I used to take up to 60 pancreatic enzymes a day to help digest my food. Now it's decreased to about 30. So it's still
I shouldn't
quite
laugh, that's awful, but still a lot.
It's a lot of tablets. But, it's, and that's just one element of the breakdown of CF. But, you can imagine a simple cold, sadly, can be quite deadly for somebody with cystic fibrosis. There's a lot that goes on the inside of the body. So I always say to anybody, doesn't have to be CF or not, but, never judge a book by its cover, because you don't know what's going on underneath somebody. And with CF, it's an invisible illness. And unfortunately, the severity of it is quite a lot more severe than people can realise. You look quite healthy on the outside. I know a lot of people are shocked to learn sometimes that I've got CF myself. When I was born with CF, I was given a very low life expectancy, and for many, many years, up until only recently, the average life expectancy for someone with CF was only 37. Now, I've just turned 35. I've got 2 children with the third on the way. That's a whole nother miracle story.
Wow.
But 37 doesn't sit right with me. So I'm very passionate in raising awareness for cystic fibrosis, and I've been, fortunate enough to have the gift of the gab and talk about it. But quite a unique story that I share enough with everyone to sort of help, raise the awareness, bring some exposure to CF itself. And if my story can help inspire, motivate, or even educate someone, in the world, then I'm doing a pretty good job with that.
Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having on Fresh 92.7.
Thanks for that, Alex. You're listening to Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
Wavelength.
Before the break, you heard me talking with Emma Money about cystic fibrosis. Right now, we have Grace talking with MasterChef contestant and Australian chef, Poe.
You may have visited the Adelaide Showgrounds for the Farmers Market or the Gillies Market, but a lot argue that it's prime real estate for housing. Grace gets to the bottom with this, with Poe explaining why the location is so special.
Wavelength on Fresh 92.7.
The Adelaide Farmers Market at the Showgrounds is something you've been involved in for quite some time now. How long have you had the Jam Feast store there for? I think it's like 7 to 8 years, possibly.
And I'm sure in that time you've built a strong rapport with all the people there, being both the public and the other stallholders, the organisers. Do you think that the location has played a role in the experience, being things like its history or its proximity to the CBD?
Yeah, like I definitely love going every Sunday. I refer quite often to it as my church because I feel like communing with all the other stallholders, seeing the customers, it's kind of like the end of the cycle of being able to have the full experience of like setting up the shop, baking on Saturday, setting up the shop, and then doing all that. Like it's really awesome. But yeah, the proximity is to the city, I think, is really awesome. It's really central and it's really easy for people to find, just, especially because it's like, the Adelaide Showground. I love it.
Do you think the location is something that adds to its magic, or could it potentially thrive anywhere?
I think it's definitely related to the location. We used to be in the car park, but during COVID we had to find a bit more space so that we could include social distancing, so we moved further into the market. But now we have the lawns, which is really nice. However, interestingly enough, I find it not as intimate in terms of communing with the other stallholders because we're so much further apart and so spread out now. It's harder to get around to say hi to everyone. But in terms of seeing people enjoying the space, what we have now is a lot better. Yeah, it means that people actually hang around and enjoy the market. Do you know what I mean? Whereas before it was definitely like grab and go.
Yeah, for sure. People see it and they're like, oh, do that while I'm there, let's go.
Yeah. There's pros and cons to the old location and the new location.
And speaking to your own experience, hypothetically, if they were ever to move to a different location, do you think that yourself and other stallholders would be impacted and the public would be particularly impacted?
That's a really interesting question. It's very, very specific to the location. Like I wouldn't, like it's too pie in the sky for me to answer unless I knew what it was. I will say that it's very much being part of people's routines, and it's really interesting. Once we moved like 2 stalls down a long time ago when we first started, and people couldn't find us. So it's like if you break where they know you are, they won't really like look.
Creatures of habit.
It's like, yeah, creatures of habit. And if they sort of break the routine for 1 week because the kids had sport or something, you'll find that they'll go missing for like about a month and sometimes several months. So it's an interesting thing, like being part of that routine. It even happens to me because we find it really hard to get around because we're so busy the minute we get there, and then we're working almost at to the end. Sometimes like I'm like, oh, what, were you guys new? They're like, no, we've been with the market for 4 years. I'm like, oh, that's really embarrassing.
What do you think the importance of having the farmers market each week is, both being for yourself, a stallholder, and the public?
Well, firstly, it's teaching people to eat seasonally and be able to have conversations with producers. I think that is one of the hugest roles that the market plays. It gives people a sense of community. I think we've still got a little bit of way to go in Australia in terms of understanding seasonality. But the market really, like when you go and taste an apple from the market that's grown beautifully and hasn't travelled miles, it's just like planets of difference from what you get at the market. So the importance is teaching people what food should taste like, and I think it's wonderful for kids to be able to walk around and experience that, like, tactile and visual, and and it's just like a really nice vibe. And so I think that part of it is really lovely, and also involving the family in a ritual. And I think food is an easy thing to bring the family together with. So I think all those aspects are things that I think make the market a bit of a treasure, I think, for Adelaide.
Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having on Fresh 92.7.
Thank you, Poe and Grace. Up next, Necrobiotics with Kieran. You're listening to Wavelength on Fresh.
Wavelength.
Personally, there is not much more that scares me than spiders, but when Kieran pitched this story, I physically winced. For Wavelength Explains, we have necrobiotics, aka robot spiders.
Wavelength Explains on Fresh 92.7.
Hi and welcome to Wavelength Explains. I'm Kieran.
Yes, we know all about that, but what do you want?
All right, Pushy. I'm here to tell you all about necrobiotics.
I think it will thrill you. It may shock you. It might even horrify you.
Researchers at Rice University in Texas have been working on using the reanimated corpses of spiders to perform manual tasks.
You really believe that you can bring life to the dead?
You see, unlike humans, spiders don't have muscles which control their limbs, relying instead on fluid moving into those limbs to make them expand. Kind of like when guys get a bit turned on. Not now, Alex. Anyway, these scientists
Frankenstein.
have discovered that by simply inserting a syringe into a dead wolf spider and sealing it up, with the slightest air pressure, they can make the legs move, just as if.
It's alive!
And also some sort of nightmare claw machine.
Throw the switches.
It is hoped that in future they can learn how to make the spider's legs move individually and autonomously. This would make these reanimated corpses perfect for fine motor tasks in small or difficult areas. But that's surely the most horrifying thing happening with insects right now. Right? No. At another university in Texas. Seriously, guys, is everything okay there? Engineers have developed cockroach cyborgs, which is a phrase I never thought I'd say on radio, but here we are.
You're crazy!
By wiring a miniature computer directly into the central nervous system of a cockroach, the engineers are able to remote control their every movement.
Go on, fix the electrodes.
Unlike robots, the cockroaches are ideal for infiltrating small spaces and adapting to their environment. This makes them perfect for search and rescue in disaster areas, underground maintenance, and getting into radio studios. Okay, maybe not that last one. Sorry, Cass. To cut a long story short, whether you find it disgusting, horrific, or just plain icky, necrobiotics is a rapidly growing scientific field, and it could be hugely beneficial to mankind.
I can't get it out of my mind.
Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having on Fresh 92.7.
Thank you for that, Kieran.
Don't even think about going anywhere. Up next, Kate talks to the yoga instructor about yoga and Rundle Mall. You're here with Fresh.
Wavelength.
Welcome back to Fresh. When you think Rundle Mall, you may have an image of the mall's balls, shops, pigs, or that one guy that does the flip-flop songs on the pipes, but last Saturday, Rundle Mall spiked a lot more images when they hosted a yoga event. To find out more, Kate spoke with Ben Greenwood, a yoga instructor.
I know there's gonna be
Heaps good news on Wavelength.
Rundle Mall and yoga are two things that don't usually go hand in hand, but on Saturday morning, the mall's balls were joined by 400 Zen individuals. Now, Ben, you're a yoga instructor at this event. Tell me, what was it like?
It was actually pretty incredible. So myself and my team of 7 teachers, we actually all spread out along Rundle Mall. We all had our own podiums. And then we just worked through a gentle vinyasa yoga class, so sort of like a beginner-friendly flow class, and the event went really well.
So along the mall, there were 7 different yoga instructors. How did you coordinate that with each other?
Yeah, so basically we had like a speaker set up so that all the teachers could follow along with my instructions.
How did you manage to have yoga event in such a busy place?
Not a small operation. Like when you're talking about 400 people in a yoga class, It's a lot to manage, especially they might be beginners or they might not have much experience, so you definitely got to accommodate for that as well.
Did the other passers-by accommodate it as well? Did you get some interesting looks? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, a few times actually, because, Rundle Mall's still open, and then, people might be going and doing their shopping, and then they're walking along and there's all these people practicing yoga. So a lot of people stopped. I think some people were curious, and I reckon some people might have even wanted to join in.
It's a bit of a different atmosphere to the usual yoga practice. Did it affect the vibe at all, or was it pretty on point?
It's definitely interesting because for one, you're outside and everything's a bit more spread out, and you've got like people walking by and everything like that. For me as a teacher, once I got into the practice and got like that muscle memory coming back, and I just felt like I was back in the studio. Finished with a nice meditation as well, so just a relaxing, shavasana, and like that would definitely be a sight. When someone's walking down Rundle Mall, then everyone's just lying down on the floor. So yeah, it was really fun. I had a great time.
Wavelength, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having on Fresh 92.7.
Thanks for that, Kate. And that brings us to the end of the show tonight. Thank you so much for listening.
Make sure you subscribe to the Wavelength podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. You can listen back to our old episodes right now, and tonight's episode will be up soon.
Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back next week with another episode, sparking the convos about Adelaide you should be having.
Been a fun week, Cassie.
It has been great. It's been a lot of love in the studio, as per usual. When we're in here, it's all love, babes.
Yeah, exactly.
No hate.
I know. So much going on in Adelaide. I'm so glad.
I know. It's been great to get out, have some nightlife.
Yeah, we live in a great city.
Yeah, the film festival is right next to us
too.
too.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm ashamed to say I've not seen anything yet. You're listening to Fresh.